Good afternoon, Northern Europe, and welcome to this new episode of the News Bulletin. It's a pleasure to be able to host you on actually the very last episode of the year already. It's flown by. My name is Alexandra. I am an account strategist for the Google Marketing Solutions team, and I work for the Belgian market.
Hi, my name is Oscar. I'm also part of the Google Marketing Solutions team, and I work for the Dutch market.
And today we'll be closing off on the attribution topic. So 2 weeks ago on the last episode, Oscar presented also a couple of omnichannel solutions. We'll be going further on attribution and first of all, giving yourself a little bit of a refresher on what attribution actually means within Google Ads ecosystem. And then we'll try to cover some frequently asked questions. We'll move on to a Danish case study about a company that adopted an omnichannel strategy, which also kind of flows back to the last episode that we've had. Product updates wise, we have a little update to share with you about responsive search ads, and then 2 blog posts that we would love for you to take a look at. Lastly, as always, we'll set a time aside for some questions if you would have any. This is a live stream, so feel free to just add them while we are giving you the overview, and we'll cover them at the end of the session. All right, first and foremost, deep diving on attribution. So a bit of a refresher about attribution, which is actually a set of rules that will determine how credit will be assigned to different touch points within a conversion path. So why do we need this? Is because with the years, the complexity only increases within a conversion path or a customer journey. And for you as a marketeer, it would only be more important to understand which touch points, which channels or different tools that you set in your marketing mix, how they contributed to the final action or transaction that you were looking to drive. Within attribution, we see 3 main areas. The first one being all about intent across different devices. So we want to understand how user behavior, what it looks like between a mobile, desktop, and tablet, because those different devices are usually all represented within even one customer journey. People use different types of screens within their user journey, and it's important for you to understand at what point which device played a role. Second area of focus will be intra-channel activity. So for example, only within the search advertising channel, how did the different campaigns set up there contribute to orienting the user towards a transaction? And then the third area will be the multi-channel activity. Well, you'll be looking at different channels such as, not only search, but also display channels, organic channels, social channels, and try to understand user behavior across those. And again, how they contributed to your end goal. So for the 2 first areas, those are areas you can investigate and learn from in AdWords or Google Ads search attribution. The last one is currently only available on Google Attribution, but you can also kind of use Google Analytics to get a bit of a stronger insights into how multi-channel activity is driving your final conversions. Going another step back to really trying to make sure you not only understand what attribution is and its importance, but we have a little bit of an example about how you can also try to explain attribution to your end clients or any other partners you work with.
Yes, so Alexandra hates this example, so I took the honor...
cheesy, corny one.
Yeah, to explain this example. It's about a marriage, and it is a great metaphor for attribution models. So the journey of getting married, one could say that there are roughly 4 steps before a man can marry the girl, the woman of his dreams, the love of his life.
And traditional view of the thing, but yes.
Traditional, you could definitely call it. So let's say that you are a young man, you're single, ready to mingle, and you're swiping on Tinder, and you find a girl that really catches your attention. You think she looks great, you love the pictures, she has a great description, you have the same interests, so you decide to super like her and she likes you back. It's a match. That's great, right? It's the first step that you meet this girl. You chat a little bit for a few weeks, and then at some point you decide, let's go on a date. You have a coffee together, have a cake, share a cake, and have great conversations. Turns out you have quite a lot of the same interests. So you date for a few weeks, and in the end, you decide to have a travel together, which is step 3. You go to Paris and have an amazing week. People often say that the first vacation makes or breaks a relationship. Well, this one definitely makes it, and you decide to continue your relationship. At the fourth step, you decide to propose after roughly 1 year of dating, and then finally you convert because she says yes. Beautiful, and you get married. So this is a great metaphor of all the steps representing a touch point with the customer. So all the ads that the customer clicked on or looked at, and the conversion is then the marriage. There are many different ways to decide which activity gets the credits for the marriage. It really depends on who you ask, actually. So if you would ask Tinder, it would definitely say that the first step, so swiping right on Tinder, is the sole contributor of the marriage, because without the swipe, without the match, these people would maybe not even have met each other and wouldn't have gotten married. So fair, right? Mm-hmm. However, if you ask the guy, he would probably say that the fourth step is the most important step, because without his proposal that he plans carefully, there wouldn't have been a marriage either, which is also quite fair to say. However, if you ask a data scientist, he would probably give a bit of credits to every single step on the way of marriage, because, you know, every little step had a contribution to the marriage. If you ask me personally, I would say that the data scientist would be the most correct, because indeed you could say that every single step contributes to the marriage. And I think it's just a great example that shows you that there's different ways to look at a situation. Same goes for attribution. Mm-hmm. And Alex will tell us more about that.
Exactly. So the example Oscar just gave can be translated back to the real world of Google Ads, where the different scenarios actually translate into different models that we offer within the platform. So we actually, at the moment, next to data-driven attribution model, have 5 other attribution models. First click and last click. So the first click model will be the Tinder model that will attribute all the credit of the final conversion to the first interaction or touch point. And the last click model would actually be the proposal attribution model that Oscar just laid out, where the last interaction before the conversion gets the whole credit. And then we have 3 others in between. Those 5 attribution models are actually still a set of hypotheses and rules. You just say to the system to take a certain rule into account. So in all cases, for every conversion, either give the first or the last touch point all the credit, or another set of type of rules where I'll get to in a minute. But next to those 5, we also have the data-driven attribution model, which is actually not based on rules or hypotheses, but based on the data that we've seen historically within an account. So the data-driven model is the one that the data scientist would actually propose. And how we get to actually value every touch point is by comparing different types of conversion path. So the example you have here is you have 2 conversion paths which are very similar. So you see that the 2 last interactions were actually the same ones, 2 search queries with the same queries that ignited it. But the first one actually there was a one more step before those. So what we try to do is to be able to really know how much that first step contributed to the final conversion. We look at the conversion rate of one path where there was only 2 of the 3 touch points, and that conversion rate is one of 2.4%. And if we know that the path with the 3 touch points has a conversion rate of 2.7%, then we know that the difference is about 0.3%, and that will be the contribution of the first step, which is not represented in the second path, to the final conversion. So that really helps you have a pretty in-depth view of how any touch point of campaigns that you're trying to leverage are orienting our users to a final conversion. Sure. Having that insight, on average, we have seen that it brings about 5% increases of uplift in conversions. Then when it looks back to the rule-based attribution models, we had 3 other models. And what you need to do here is kind of look back at your business model and try to match, the strategy that you apply within your business now to those to your attribution model. So if you have a pretty neutral growth strategy, we recommend to just go with a linear attribution model, where every touch point in the funnel will be attributed the same credits equally. But if you have a bit of a more conservative growth strategy, so you're not really looking to acquire a lot of clients, or you have a very long time lag, so it takes a long time between a first impression, ad impression or ad click to a final conversion, we would recommend going with the time decay attribution model. So the time decay attribution model will actually give more credit to touch points that happened closer to conversion than the ones that happened a long time ago. So imagine that we have a conversion path with only 2 touch points, one that happened 3 weeks ago and one that happened the day before I converted. Then the one that happened yesterday will get most of the credit in that funnel, but the first one will also still get some credit, but much less than the one that happened recently. So the dimension of recency plays a big role within this model. However, if you have a more aggressive growth strategy, we would recommend going for a position-based attribution model. So here, both the first and the last click will get the most credit in any case, and the rest of the credit will be divided equally among other touch points. We would recommend this one mostly if you're, for example, you're adding new keywords and you try to see what type of impact they have on the first interaction with a new customer. We would also recommend this in accounts where you have a very strong divide between brands campaigns and generic campaigns, because brand campaigns kind of have a tendency to drive that last interaction within the accounts, the last interaction before the conversion. But that means also that you kind of get a blind spot as to which generic queries brought in the client in the first time, because, you know, most when looking at the marketing funnel in general, you have to really orient people to just a product or a service first before they get to know your brand, and then they come back for your brand, which is why it's usually one of the last points. So that's also the reason why position-based is actually pretty good, because then it helps you reassess the importance of generic search. But in all cases, we would just recommend really just trying to move away from a last-click attribution model, because we have seen that the other models drive the most performance, as mentioned before, on average about a 5% increase in performance. Last-click attribution model makes sense in businesses where the time lag is extremely short. I would even say immediate, where you see that about 90% of your conversions happen within the hour of the search, for example. If you have any type of emergency based service, so if you're a plumber or locksmith, taxi driver, any call-based businesses where the action that you're trying to drive is a call, those are use cases that you most likely will drive an action within an hour and quite immediately, and that will only have about 1 touch point in their funnel. Then why not go for a last click? But the use cases are actually pretty minor when compared to any other type of use cases. Next to that, we will also just let you know that the last click attribution model is actually the standard setting when you're setting up a new conversion action, which is why the bulk of you know, the models that we see being used is the last click, which is also why you have to kind of make the purposeful choice to go back to your conversion actions years after you've set them up to see if your model still makes sense for your business. So how do you actually adjust your attribution model? So first of all, once you move away from last click, make sure that you also kind of rethink the time frame that you usually look at when analyzing data. So we usually recommend to always use a 30-day window when analyzing data, but like exclude the most recent days. How many days should you exclude? As many days as it usually takes a user to convert within your account. So if you have a conversion lag of 2 days, then the way I would look at your data is the last 30 days minus 2 days. So you're looking back 32 days ago. That's how you should kind of take those time frames into account. Next to that, and just beyond just the time frame, changing an attribution model in alone is not going to change your performance. That's not what's going to drive those 5% more conversions. What you need to do once you've done the change and once you've let that new data come into your account is, first of all, revisit bids and budgets, but also look at keywords that you might have passed in the past because you thought they were underperforming. Maybe they were just not credited fairly, and then consider auto bidding or smart bidding. We would never recommend to move on to smart bidding on a last click attribution model.
True. I think the way to see it is like when you have a good attribution model, especially data driven, you just have the system like at Google just has a more realistic view of where your conversions come from. So, and when you measure more, you know more. So when you measure more, your auto bidding strategy, your auto bidding algorithm has more data and more realistic data to work with. Mm-hmm. So it can in turn generate even more conversions with more data. It's kind of the way to see it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fair, absolutely. Good point. So where do you get the information to actually base your choices upon, your decisions upon? I would always recommend to go within your Tools tab in your Google Ads account and go to the Search Attribution Reports. That's where on the left you will see different options of reports that you can gather. But the two most interesting ones, in my opinion, are the time lag and the path link report. So the time lag report will show you how many days it takes a user to convert between either a first impression or first click to the last conversion. So you see within this account that it's a very long conversion path, about 15 days between a first ad click to a final conversion. Second of all, if you look at the path link, you will see how many touch points on average a user needs to have within their customer journey before they convert. So in this case, you see that the user in general has to be exposed to, on average, about 7 to 8 ads before actually converting. So that's just a representation of how complex this customer journey is and how much more important it is to make sure that every touch point in that funnel will be attributed fairly. So those are two good points to take into account, not only when choosing a new attribution model, but also when looking at timeframes that you need to take into account for analyzing data. Next to that, how do you actually make budget decision based on the new attribution model? So you changed it, you had about 30 days to let the new data come in, and then you might realize that certain campaigns have been either undervalued or overvalued. You can also get this modeling of performance in the search attribution report. So the example here, for example, you see that on a time TK model compared to a last click model, it seems that the generic paid actually brought 46% more conversion than you might think on the last click attribution, which is why we would recommend augmenting the budget on that campaign. Forever, brand, and DSA, for example, actually brought less conversion that you might have think. So to then decrease budgets on those and then again increase on another campaign if it was undervalued in the past. Pretty straightforward. Cool. All right, moving on to the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Let's wrap up this attribution part with an attribution Q&A. We took the most common questions and we tried to answer them as well as possible. If you have more, of course, I would like to remind you that we have a live stream, so please feel free to ask questions there as well. The first question is, how far back from time of conversion does the model use data? The answer is the model takes into account up to 90 days of history prior to the conversion. So up to 90 days ago, when there is an interaction point, it will take into account this interaction point with the customer in the attribution model, and as of now, it is not possible to lengthen this time period. What are the minimum requirements for AdWords attribution? So it's quite of a long answer. Well, for any attribution model, obviously the first requirement is to advertise Google search. I think it's quite straightforward. You also need to use conversion tracking, either in AdWords or you can import Google Analytics goals into AdWords. To have a data-driven attribution model, however, the requirements on a conversion type level have to be over a 30-day period, at least 15,000 clicks in combination with 600 conversions. The reason why this number is quite high is because also, like Alexandra discussed earlier, is that the system will need to make a lot of small little A/B tests and calculate the delta of the added uplift of a certain interaction. And in order to get to a statistically significant result, it needs quite a lot of data for that. So that's why at least 600 conversions is a minimum requirement. Does attribution also work on MCC level? The answer is yes. Only if you are using cross-account conversion tracking. Just due to for the sake of time, we will not dive into this really deeply, but there's a lot of information about cross-account tracking on the Google support pages. Also, you can ask your account manager, of course. So if different accounts are driving clicks to the same website with the same conversion goal, we recommend using this cross-account tracking, and then you can use attribution also on the MCC level between accounts. What often happens, for example, an example case could be that an advertiser has a brand and a non-branded search account. And if you wouldn't use cross-account tracking, you would not be able to see the full click path and the true value of each click in the consumer journey. And instead of that, you would probably see double conversions as well. Can I use this feature for specific campaigns or keywords? the answer is unfortunately no. You can only change your model at the conversion type level. So you cannot change your attribution model on campaign level or on ad group level. You can only change your attribution model on conversion level, either on accounts level or an MCC level, depending on your conversion tracking setup. How do I know if a DDA, so data-driven attribution model, is available? So as said before, we need at least 15,000 clicks and 600 conversions on the conversion type level. Other than that, as an advertiser, you don't need to do anything. So the DDA model will come available automatically in your Google Ads accounts. The DDA model is only available if these conditions are met, and also for smaller conversion types. So where can you see if it is available? You can see it. This is actually the old interface. In the new interface, you can see it on the top right corner. If you go to Tools, and then go to Conversions, and then go to Attribution Model. And if it's not available yet, you will still see it in the options, but then you will see, as it also shows you on the picture, you currently don't have enough conversion data to use data-driven. Once you have the 600 conversions, it will automatically show up and you will be able to use it.
If you have a lot of conversion action within your account, what you can also do is within the conversion tab of your account, just add a column that is called DDA eligible. That's what it stands for. And it will just literally be a column that says yes or no. And you'll see exactly which conversion action are already eligible for DDA or not. But know that it's also fine, that you have different actions on different attribution model. So if you have one that is already eligible for DDA, just already switch that one and work towards it for the others. Yeah,
good point. True. How long will it take to see results from a new attribution model in the conversion columns? This depends really on the average sales cycle. So if most customers take 4 to 5 days, which is just an example, to convert from the first click to the final conversion, you can expect that it will take at least that time period for the reporting to reflect the new attribution model. So it needs at least one sales cycle. So that's the time frame from the first click until the conversion, which also Alex talked about earlier.
Yes.
For any other questions, make sure to check out our blog post. There's a blog post on Google Ads Help about beyond last click attribution, Google best practices for some final information and insights.
It's pretty complete, so I would definitely check it out. Yeah.
Cool. All right, for our case study today, we have Elgiganten, which is really thriving as a company by adopting an omnichannel strategy. It's a Danish company, and they had some goals in mind. So their goals were, first of all, to be the most customer-oriented store chain, to optimize the customer journey for omnichannel, because they are an omnichannel player, and they also want to maximize total sales irrespective of the channel. So they really want to get out the most from both offline and online channels. So their approach, they had 3 approaches actually. The first one was to implement identical pricing in-store and online, which I think is a very good strategy if you also want to make a fair comparison. They launched the click and collect service, and I think Alex can tell us more about that.
Yeah, so it's trying to really play on what we call ROPO effect, where people research online but purchase offline. So that people can research online, make a wish list, click to buy it, but then choose to collect it physically in the store.
Yeah, so thereby making it a lot easier also to make the purchases online, and thereby also having an omni-channel approach for digital marketing with total sales as the main goal.
Which is really interesting because we often see digital channels getting different types of KPIs, which are kind of digital-only KPIs, view, reach, impressions, CPCs. But as a business, your bottom line most often is your North Star, and it's a fair point to challenge your digital channels on that bottom line too, which is your sales.
It is. I totally agree. And you can also see it in the results. They were amazing. So the 63% uplift in increase in store visits for the search campaigns year on year. Their Google Display Network campaign delivered 92 more times more store sales than online sales. And they had an 8.8 increase in total sales year over year growth, while the local industry fell by 1.4%, which is also an important detail to mention.
Absolutely. One that sticks out here for me is the value of display. So that any type of more upper funnel activity, display, YouTube, YouTube for reach in specific, usually it's difficult to tie that to online sales directly, but that does not mean that it doesn't create any type of ad recall or brand awareness, brand consideration to your end consumer, which then translates into footfall. So that's very obviously the case here. So that was interesting to see.
Absolutely. And that's also why it's so important to also calculate your offline return on ad spend, not just take your online return on ad spend into account when you are calculating your total return on ad spend in Google Ads.
So at the end of the day, Nico, which is a digital specialist at Elgiganten, sorry for my Danish pronunciation.
Spanish pronunciation.
Yeah, I know. I tried. So what he mentioned was that what was really interesting was that they could see which products are more likely to drive people to the store rather than just being bought online, and that they could also see how the link between retail locations and using a mobile device could really drive footfall as well, which is always very interesting insights to have as an omnichannel business.
Absolutely. Great example. Cool. So moving on to the product updates, I think I'll take the first one, then you will. Yeah. All right. So the responsive search ads, we've talked about these before. They have now been rolled out to 10 additional languages, which are a lot of the languages actually in our cluster. Danish, Dutch, Italian, Japanese, Norwegian, Polish, Portuguese, Russian, Swedish, and Turkish.
And Norwegian.
And Norwegian. Sorry, I skipped Norwegian.
No worries.
That's right.
We didn't forget about you, Norway.
We did not, absolutely. So the great thing about responsive search ads, of course, is, as you know, it uses machine learning to learn which headlines and which descriptions are working best for converting. And then using machine learning, it will automatically serve the most relevant headlines and descriptions for the most relevant audience. And I think it's a really great way. The first results already came back with significantly higher CTRs compared to the traditional text ads. So I think it's a very good one to implement.
The important point here is that you don't need whitelisting to be able to start this off, so which was the case a couple of months ago. So as soon as you start a new text ad, search ad in one of those 10 languages, you will get the option of doing that in RSA, responsive search ads.
Absolutely.
Cool. Finishing on a little bit of a lighter note, keep on trying to drive you all to our blog posts. My favorite one being the keyword that just launched a new article about the most trending holiday gifts. This is a top 10 list based on Google Shopping data. So both for you as an advertiser, as a parent, if you're looking for hot toys this year, this is apparently the 10 most popular gifts or toys to get. I'm very sad to say that I didn't recognize one of those 10 except Legos. So
yeah, me too.
I'm officially too old for toys.
No, the Nerf. The Nerf.
Nerf, yeah, okay. That's
like the shooting
right.
thing.
I never actually played with those, but still, that hurt. So excuse us for the reality check, but it's a really cool blog post. There's a lot of insights about the end of year and the holidays purchasing path. So I would definitely recommend checking it out, just as I would recommend for you to check out our Santa tracker, which was a big success last year. So on different platforms, so on Google Search, on Google Maps, we have the Santa Village, Santa tracker, a lot of little Easter eggs around the holidays and the end of year, which is pretty cool. So I would absolutely recommend you to check it out, also on the keywords blog post. Right. Yes. Last but not least, I see we have one question Q&A, in the chat. Wait, just double checking. We only have one question. Yes. So I think the question was, why are attribution models so fixed? Will they ever be customizable? So that's a very good question. In Google Analytics, you can already model your own attribution model based on any type of rules that you might have yourself. However, that is not tied back to Google Ads and will not be taken into account by, for example, smart bidding strategies. But that will be a feature in Google Attribution, which is launching next year. So I hope that answers your question. And I think if that is it when it comes to questions, yeah, then the only thing left for us is to say thank you. Thank you for the wonderful year. It was really nice to be able to have you guys watching us. It was a pleasure to host, and we wish you the best of holidays.
We do, and thank you for watching.
Yes. See you soon.
See you. Ciao.
Bye.